Well, greeting and welcome to everybody. Got it, meeting. Greetings and welcome to everyone at our ARMA New England's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in RIM and IG program meeting. We welcome everybody. ARMA New England represents 6 states, but we also have people from the Northeast region, including New York, Philly, and New Jersey. So we have quite a large group here. I wanted to, give some praise to the team, our team here in ARMA New England for putting this together. A lot of hard work by Colin, Stephanie, Ruth, and her team. We're looking forward to this panel meeting. I'll also throw in here that if you want to go to our website, armane.org, and you would like to be a new member, please go into that website and check that out, and also look at our future meetings that are coming up this year. We have a golf event, an educational event coming up in September, but we're very excited to have this meeting today and this panel. And I'll hand this off to Colin and Stephanie. They'll be our moderators today. So welcome everybody once more. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'll just sort of reiterate a little bit of what John said. I just want to thank our group who's going to be speaking today. I think it's an incredibly important conversation. So Stephanie, Usra, Glenn, Nicole, Ruth, and John, can't wait to hear what you all have to say, and appreciate your willingness to share your experiences with us. I know I'll speak for myself at least. I'm going to learn a lot today and looking forward to it. So kick it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie McKinney, and I identify as a Black female, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a records management supervisor over at Skadden Arps, and I'm VP of Community Outreach here at ARMA New England. So just a little bit before we get started, when I joined back with ARMA, I came into the group and everything, and we've been talking about, diversity and equity and inclusion within our, industry and community. And so on the physical aspect of diversity, I was kind of wondering where are all the people that look like me, and I was, just kind of curious, and we got some conversations going. And then I just wanted to make sure too that we were featuring other people from other communities, like our LGBTQ plus community, our disabilities community, whether it's through emotion intelligence or neurodiverse people. And I kind of wanted to make sure that we were all at the table and being heard and seen. And so as we talked more, I have to say, a great big shout out to our ARMA New England, my family. We've had great conversations, and I was encouraged to do this. And so here we are today. And I think we have a wonderful team here. Everybody represents different industries through RIM and IG and records management, and different journeys on how they got there and how they've been feeling. And so today we're going to hear their voices and experience. And so I think it's going to be a great conversation. I think I'll learn a lot, as everybody else, I hope. And that's how we're going to do our discussion today. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, and then we'll get going into the questions. So I think I'll kick it off to Ruth. And Ruth, if you could start and introduce yourself, and then everybody else can follow.
Hi, I'm Ruth. I work for the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I am almost 1 year at the position. I am mixing archives, libraries, and records into the position, so it's really fun. So it throws all 3 of my professions together. I have been doing library work since I was in high school, and I am neurodivergent, and I was identified as this during grad school. And I will, Sarah, you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ruth. So, hi, everybody. My name is Yusra Khan. I am the Information Governance Supervisor at Withers Bergman. I'm also the VP of Marketing and Communications for ARMA New England. And so the way that I am diverse is that I am a Muslim woman and person of color. During this panel, I will probably focus mostly on my religious diversity, but I feel the need to also interject here and say I am originally from New York, and that's going to play a part in this. So just letting you know, been in Connecticut for about 1.5 years now. Thank you. Over to John.
Hi everyone, I'm John Spencer. I'm based out of Dallas. I currently work for Ernst & Young. And this year I'm reaching 20 years with the firm. So I'm looking forward to my 20-year gift.
That's a big deal, you know.
It really is. It really is. I've been part of ARMA since 2008. And that's when I did a career pivot. I came from marketing and switched over to records information management. That's a story for another time, but I've been enjoying it ever since. I'm also, on top of my day job, I am part of Ernst & Young's professional networks, employee resource groups, and I am the co-lead for the EY Dallas Black Professional Network. I also sit on the NABA Association of Black Accountants, Western Region Board of Advisors, and looking forward to just having this lovely conversation today.
Glenn, you want to jump in?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Glenn Fisher. I'm the Global Director of Information Governance at Mayer Brown. Have been here about 8 or 9 months now, and it's a new role at the firm. So I'm building out a new information governance program from scratch. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of work, but a great opportunity. I've been in the legal industry for about 25 years now. Working at different firms all over the United States, actually, because I moved around a lot in my earlier years. And I identify as gay, and my pronouns are he, him.
And Nicole, want to bring us home?
Sure. I'm Nicole Sinclair. I'm a records manager. I work for Epic Global Business Transformation Solutions. I have been in the records industry now since 2001, and literally in records since 2001. That is what I have been doing. So yes, I'm looking forward to this discussion today.
Wonderful panel. Thank you so much for your introductions. And I do want to say also, we had a flyer going up earlier. We will show it again. And you can scan our QR code. And then this way you can read everyone's bios on our website. Everybody's up there, and hopefully you can check it out and check out our website also. We'll say that again towards the end. Colin, do we want to get ready to post up some questions? We'll go with question 1 first. So what experiences led you to being connected and working in RIM, IG, or vocation? So this one, I'll just open up to the panel. Whoever would like to jump in first, go for it. And we can get a little conversation going on this. All right, now don't be shy.
I'll go first. I'll go first. So I think a lot of people could probably relate to this. This is, ending up in records and IG isn't necessarily a career path that I planned on, to start with. It was really out of necessity and chance. I was putting myself through college. And at the time, I grew up in New England in Massachusetts, but I transferred to school down in Savannah, Georgia, an art degree, which totally opposite but I realized I needed to support myself and get some extra money. So I applied to this small little real estate boutique firm that was down there. And I did a combination of working sort of in their office services, but also handling their records. And I realized that I really enjoyed it. I mean, it spoke to a lot of my strengths. I like organization and filing and customer service and really creating order out of chaos, which was the situation I found myself in. And ironically, every other job I had within the legal industry, always the same situation. I'd come in to sort of reorganize and put structure around information and issues that were happening. So over time, it turned out to be this great career for me that I really enjoyed, especially when I moved from just being sort of an operational clerical role to management and leadership, and really being able to create change for the better within an organization and having a positive impact and adding value, I think, over time. So it's turned out to be a great career. I'm really grateful for it, and especially the people like here that I've been able to meet through ARMA and that organization. So
Wonderful. Anybody else have anything to add?
I'll speak. I think it's weird. I had someone ask me from high school, am I doing what I plan to do? And I'm like, I never heard of records when I was younger. I'm like, no, I didn't know. Who thinks of this? I don't know. Some people may, but I never heard of it. I actually ended up in this industry just purely by chance. I had graduated from college. I majored in sociology, criminal justice, and was just like, okay, what am I going to do right now? I started temping, and I ended up temping at a law firm where a secretary actually wanted someone to assist her with files for her attorney, because the attorney had just joined the firm, and all of the files were stacked in a conference room in the law firm on the floor, just chaos. And I found out what really was going on was that the secretary really had no desire to deal with this. It was chaos, and she just wanted someone to be able to be the liaison between the attorney and records to get these files organized. She wanted no parts. And she ended up actually losing her job. And I had only been there several weeks, and I don't even know what my title was. I was reporting directly to the secretary. I kept showing up even though she was not there. And so the records, I was dealing with people in the records department, and I told them my situation. I was like, yeah, y'all can keep coming to me, but I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna just kind of fill this out for the meantime. And they said, we have a high turnaround in our department. You should take your resume and give it to our boss. And I did just that. And they did not have anything at that time, but 2 months later, their boss called me back. I was in the Washington office. They had just opened some offices in Northern Virginia. And he, for some reason, trusted me to go out there and work in a case room. No experience, no knowledge of this. And literally, I have been doing this ever since.
Nice story. That's really awesome, Nicole. Anybody else on the panel wanna?
I mean, I could take a stab at this. I don't think anyone ever starts out in records. So my story is kind of like both Nicole and Glenn's, where I always thought I was going to be an attorney. And I was like, I am going to law school. And then I did an internship, and I was like, never mind, law school's canceled. These attorneys have too much stress. I don't need that in my life. And so it just ended up that I was always organizing and filing, and I fell into records. It was one of my first real jobs out of college, and it just took off. I started out in the IP department, moved to the regular records department, and suddenly ended up here as record supervisor. So it's been a steady climb, but what I realized along the way is that I'm good at it. There's a lot of, as Glenn said, creating order. So I definitely get that sentiment right there with it, and it is something that I'm good at also. The other thing that I've noticed is ever since I've joined the field, it's also been digitizing, and I really like that. It's something that I've done as soon as I stepped foot into the field, both feet first. So every job that I've worked at so far, it's led to digitization. And since I'm good at it, I have stayed and excelled. It actually led me to do my master's in information technology. And I've decided to make it a career just because there's so much just new opportunities available. So many new opportunities available with information governance.
Wonderful. That's a nice story also. So I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I wanted to be a spy and a dancer. And here I am in records management. So that career didn't work out. Wonderful. Colin, do we want to put up the next question? As a diverse person, how has your journey helped or hindered your success? Have you felt that you've been seen and heard in your profession? And I'm going to pose this question to you, Sarah and Glenn, if you'd like to take that.
Do you want to go first, Glenn?
Oh, you can go. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll take how about helped? Okay, how has it helped to be diverse in this situation? I have a fun story where in my previous position, I was doing 60-day letters. And so I literally got hired for this position to do file disposition letters, and I have to email the attorneys. And I was like, okay, so I'm drafting the emails and stuff. And my manager at the time and my very good friend and coworker come over to me and they're like, hey, listen, this partner is not going to get back to you anytime soon. Like, don't even worry about it. And I was like, really? Okay. So I sent the email, and lo and behold, 20 minutes later, I get a response. And I was like, guys, I don't know how you're not getting responses, but I'm getting responses. I guess it's because my name might not be Carrie or Tyler, it's a little bit different. So the way that being diverse has helped in this situation is my name is so different. Partners are usually like, is this a client? And so I always get answers in that way, luckily. The other way that it's helped is, well, I wear this thing on my head, guys. I stand out, and all of the positions that I've worked in so far, there's never been a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, which I found interesting because it's not for lack of education or anything like that.
Right.
Either there haven't been many Muslims or they haven't been many Muslims that will wear like the hijab. And I think it's part of like being in the legal field. It's not really accepted. And I've seen many people just compromise and, turn into what the legal field should be. So they will remove their religious clothing, whatever, if needed. I mean, I'm talking specifically about the hijab in this case, but I've seen a lot of people just, blend in. And I have chosen not to. The other thing I've noticed, I guess this is a little bit of a hindrance, is that all of the positions that I've worked at so far, also like all of the firms and stuff, because I've always been in legal records, they've never actually had a prayer room. And so when I come in and ask for one, they're like, what? And it's been interesting to see this because like, as we've advanced, as we've learned more about, not just my religion, but every religion, people have and do practice their faiths. It's interesting that they don't have prayer rooms for anybody, but I got to say all of the firms that I've worked for have also been very accommodating and have at least found me places where I could pray.
Very interesting. That's really interesting. I'm going to make a note of that because I'm going to ask our firm if we have a prayer room.
You should. And it's surprising to
I
see how many,
encourage everybody to. Yeah.
many places don't.
Interesting, you sir. Thank you so much for that. Glenn, do you want to pick up the other side of this? Or
Sure.
whole question?
Yeah, just had a few thoughts around this. It's interesting. I mean, I'm revealing my age, but through the decades of identifying as a gay male, it's changed a lot, especially in the work environment. I know early on, I didn't really come out until I was in my late 20s. So before then, I kept it to myself. I didn't necessarily advertise it in the work environment. Even after that, I relied on if somebody had asked me a question. So if somebody was asking if, I was married, then I would say no. And I'd just say, oh, I have a boyfriend at the time, or if I did, eventually I got married when it became a law. But I feel like it's always been relatively positive for me. In fact, in my 20s, I had a job with a payroll firm. And it was the first time I saw somebody in authority, my manager, who was gay, see somebody who's gay in that type of leadership position. And it really I really respected that. And it made me, I think, believe for myself that I could achieve something like that. He ended up inadvertently being a role model for me. He didn't even know it, it'd be great if I, at some point ever ran into him or found him just to say thank you for that. But it helped me, I think, plant a seed for my own career. And, it's something that I've worked towards wanting to achieve as I moved on in my own experience. I think the biggest hindrance I had for myself in my career related to being gay was sort of, and this is a concept that people don't necessarily hear all the time, but has to do with internalized homophobia. And so it's really coming from an environment growing up where being gay wasn't accepted. And so a lot of times gay men internalize that, and you end up being very difficult on yourself, I think, and feeling ashamed. And I think that led to not having a lot of confidence as I grew up in the work environment. And it wasn't really until I started accepting myself and who I was that I was able to start developing more confidence, which has helped me a lot, I think, tremendously as I've moved up, especially into a leadership role. And I really believe in the importance of being an advocate for people who don't feel like they have a voice, or they don't feel seen, or they're ashamed of who they are. And I can easily see that sometimes, especially if on my team or in working with other people. And so I really make it a point to try to reach out to those people. Even though I'm an introvert, I will, I'll make it a point to want to help empower other people. So
Wonderful. I know, isn't it? I love that saying. It's maybe not what you do, but it's how somebody makes you feel. And like you said, this gentleman that you didn't even know he was being a role model to you, what an impression he's left on you, right?
right.
So I always try to, when I'm going out there, try to make people feel good, and and it could be something small. So it's important to build that self-confidence, So thank you for that, Glenn and Yusra. Anybody else on the panel like to follow up with this question?
Stephanie, I'd like to add something to that.
Sure, John.
But before I go, you may hear some thunder in the background. There's a
Uh-oh.
storm passing through, so you might hear that.
Stay
in the
safe over
background.
there.
But what I like to add to that, and it's really been a benefit, because one thing being a Black male is that it has given me the opportunity to make sure that I'm being inclusive, especially knowing what it feels like to be on the other end, so it helps me when it comes to, as far as networking events, when I'm going to an ARMA conference, even when I'm hiring, is to really be more intentional and mindful around being more inclusive. And it's not just people of color. When I mean being inclusive, I'm talking about the different ages, also, right? Just including everyone, right? Including everyone. So that's the main benefit of it, is that it keeps me more mindful of being inclusive of everybody.
Yes.
Right. Now, as far as some of the challenges with it, I'm gonna have to date it, a little bit like what Glenn did. Go back a little bit when I first started my career. As I mentioned in the beginning, I did a career pivot back in 2008. I started out in marketing. And so when I started out in marketing back in the 80s, a lot back then, some of my first jobs, I was the only person of color in the department. And a lot of times, people look at me and say, well, how did you get this job? Okay. How did you get in this department? And then especially when they found out I went to an historical Black university, because then they were going to ask, well, what school did you go to?
Right.
And if I didn't tell them I went to a major university, then they really wondered, how did I get this job? So it was a whole lot of factors that went into it. From people wanting to hear me talk, if I talk differently than they did, they want to say, here, let John say some words, let him say something. So I got very concerned about the way I spoke, you know, even to this day, it still follows me a little bit. But I would say, as far as the positive around it, it's helped me to be more inclusive of everyone when I'm meeting people, when I'm hiring someone, when I'm speaking, when I'm networking. It helps me be more inclusive.
Wonderful. And that's
Um,
kind of how we had that why I wanted to have this panel, because inclusive, it doesn't just mean, like I said earlier, about the physical part of diversity. We want to hear everybody's voice, and we want people to be included. And I wanted to hear different experiences. So I thank you for that. And, I have a little bit of an accent myself. And that's a total New England thing. But, and it's funny because when I deal with my New York office, they're always like, oh, you talk so funny. And I'm like, really? You guys pronounce your R's long too, so. But thank you for that. And Ruth, did you have something you wanted to add?
yes, I am part of the neurodivergent community, and often that means that aren't even seen in offices. We're not even really, those of us who are in offices are really the privileged side. So even to be in records management and in a position where I can have a leadership role is quite rare. It doesn't happen that often. There's still way too many biases, way too many assumptions. There's assumptions that were made that often we work in grocery stores or we work in warehouses. And then those of us who do want to have office positions, it's often a little bit tricky to navigate. So we can appear similar to everyone else. We just might not comprehend a social cue, or we might not comprehend humor. So certain things I've had to navigate and decide, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? Yet at the same time, I have like this secret superpower where my brain can just decide to think in many directions, like a great train station with about 10 tracks all going at the same time. And then I have this creative side. So I really find that in this position I'm in currently, I can sort of be more me, be more of the creative side, along with detailed, along with trying to go 10 tracks. And I'm just hoping that eventually, or that there will be more of us all in offices, that we will actually be permitted to work in that environment instead of just relegated to jobs where we can't be seen, can't be heard, can't be understood. And so I just really hope, and my hope is that as I continue to advocate and speak, that it will make a difference for the next generation. And couldn't even decide to come out until really during COVID. So I really didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel ready until I found more of me during COVID. So I think really the neurodivergent community needs those who are going to be alongside them, who are going to be their mentors, and who are going to either have them be a mentor in RIM, either mentor them in libraries, either mentor them in archives, and say that who they are and their thoughts and ideas are as respected as anyone else. They're welcome to the table. And they need to be heard as much as anyone else and seen as much as anyone else. Often still, there is too much negativity and not enough bridges made yet.
Thank you, Ruth. And I'll just say I've worked with Ruth for over the past year, and you've taught me a lot. And you have really blossomed a lot in this past year also. So great job, Ruth. Anybody else want to chime in on this question, or should we move on to the next? All right, Colin, may we post up the next question? What is a diversity challenge you have faced at your organization, and how did you handle it? This is open to the panel, so whoever would like to kick this off. Please do.
Well, I guess I've already alluded a little bit to this for me. Part of the diversity issue that I had was not having a prayer room. I noticed that in the chat they mentioned nursing rooms. Unfortunately, that was an option at my old firm, and I found that first of all, I needed access with a specific, my badge needed permission to access the room, and then I still had to pray, which there are set times. We have 5 prayers a day, and I can have some leeway between prayers, but there is a time, and if the nursing room is full, I have to find somewhere else to pray. And so it was either the dusty room in the HR department or the nursing room. And I can say that it was really conducive to praying, which is a spiritual act. You want it to be in a clean space where you're not rushed or anything. Definitely one of the challenges that I faced. Other than that, I do want to add on a little bit to the previous question. I was wondering if I should say it. It's not going to be a very popular belief and might even be a little bit taboo, but hashtag diversity hires. I think my religion, just who I am, I probably add diversity to the firms that I work for because there is nobody else like me. And I think that could be said for each and every person on this panel and others. Many times they need to show that, oh, we are diverse. And that is one of the benefits of being different now in this day and age, which wasn't a popular belief back in the day.
Absolutely. User, I'm just, I've got so many ideas and thoughts in my head. We'll definitely do a sidebar because, I got to ask Scad what's going on. I'm really intrigued by this. I think I have a little story. When I first started out in records in one of the major Boston law firms, there was a few of us of color there. I was probably at that time in a position a little higher than support services or the kitchen staff. And I had a few attorneys that would constantly come and say to me, can you bring me up some water? Or, ask me different questions like that, did you finish my copying job or things like that? And, and back then, I don't think I had a voice, so I wouldn't say anything. And as you had said earlier, I kind of just conformed to it. But it's, it was happening constantly with these 2 or 3 attorneys. And one day I just finally said, look, and I'm not putting down anybody that worked in support services or the kitchen or the mailroom, but I just was tired of it. And I just said, look, I'm in records. I'm sorry I don't have your coffee and I don't have your, files, your copy jobs or the kitchen or whatever. And, 2 of the attorneys apologized, but one woman just wouldn't, she just wasn't going to do it. And, and then she used to not try to say the same thing, but she couldn't help it. It would still come out, So it was just something that I kind of regret now for not standing up for myself back then. But I feel like at that time, you didn't have a voice to say things. Now, if it happened today, it's not flying. And I have no problem telling somebody in a very nice and professional way, no, I'm sorry, that's not my department or whatever. But, I think back and I just wish I had more of a voice back then to stand up for myself. So that's just a little something in my organization. And I never went to anybody either. I never went to HR. I just kind of took it, and now I think companies are more aware of things like this. And John, you were saying that you have resource groups, and I've been working for the past year on a global committee trying to bring affinity groups to the professional staff. And, I'm thinking of these different things and how we can, move forward in a better way. And I think affinity groups will be good for people to get together that, either think the same or if their parents are veterans and talk through situations and have a place to turn to and have people that, might feel the same way you do or, come up with better solutions on how to handle things. So that's just, a little story that I have. And, moving forward, I think more people have voices now. So hopefully those things don't happen all the time. And Nicole, I saw you kind of put your hands up. Did you have something similar?
It was very interesting to hear you say that, because that was actually, I didn't know what point I was going to bring that up, but I've actually experienced that at several of the law firms. I've worked at, I don't know, maybe 7 law firms since I've been in the industry. And unfortunately, I've noticed a lot of the diversity in those firms you will see in the copy room,
Mhm.
in records, or in a position more of support versus in a management or so position. And I literally, at some of the law firms I've worked at, I work on the floor in a case room. It's not always in the basement or in another, a file room off to the side. So I experienced one, and I'm very outspoken. Sometimes I wish I was a little more professional, but when I get thrown off, it's hard. I don't have a poker face.
Yeah.
And I worked on the floor with the same group for 7 years. And I'm walking down the hallway and an attorney comes out of his office and he's just like, "Oh, I'm waiting on this package. Can you check?" And I was just like, I stopped in mid-sentence and I was like, "I don't work in the mailroom." And I kept going. And I, in hindsight, could have handled that better. But I just remember just this feeling coming over me that I'm just like, I literally sit on the same floor with you. I deliver files. You've seen me do it. I walk up and down. I had a cart that is loud and I'm just like, but you still don't see me,
See me.
I've never delivered any mail to you. And not that I have anything against it, but it's just not what I do.
Exactly.
I've been in a meeting one time where I can't even, it was a meeting, we were discussing something and we all had to go around and say what we did. I announced that I was in records, said it. Well, yes, I'm in the records department. I don't know what I was at that time. I might have been a coordinator, but I announced it. And not even 20 minutes later, they were discussing something about the copy room because they send out surveys to the firm and they ask people, have we been meeting your expectations, just things that, how have your copy jobs been, or have they been on time? The service department did that, the records department didn't. And so they were mentioning this and a lady looked directly at me and she was just like, "Do you guys do you take that information into account when we fill those?" And I'm just like, "But I just said 20 minutes ago that I'm in records." So yes, it's a feeling that I don't know. I think people, in my experience, people look at me and they automatically, for some reason, are just like, without asking me, they just assume I'm in a certain department.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, in 2023, I experienced that, where I'm just automatically pushed in a certain department. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I can relate. And I'll just add another thing. There was a handful of Black women in my office, and I've been with the firm 32 years, and which kind of pushes me over the edge too, for another woman of color not to say my correct name. There's 5 of us here. I've been here for 100 years. How do you still not know my name? So these are just little things that happen.
Speaking of correct names, everybody mispronounces mine consistently, and I have to stop them and have them change it. And even till this day, there is a person, a partner at the firm. His secretary has tried, I've tried, because he's very nice and he's not trying to do it on purpose. It's what I know, Usra, and I'm like, or Ursra. I'm like, "Hi, it's Yusra." She said it loudly in front of him multiple times, but people tend to mispronounce names. And again, I've worked here for 1.5 years. We've worked together on multiple projects. How can you still mispronounce my name?
Yeah. And I try to pay attention to that also and try to learn people's names because sometimes my pronunciation isn't the greatest. And, you know, it's important. And even if your name is 15 letters, it's still important for us to learn the name and say it correctly. And that's been something I've been trying to work on for myself. So I hear you there. Anybody else want to add to this question? Ruth?
I'm a word person. So this question, when you say diversity, you say the word challenge. Language is one of the things that are sort of a trigger. So I have to sort of navigate around. So if someone poses to me this question, I have to think of another word for challenge. I have to think of another word for diversity because my language sensors go off. I have a language button that I learned about during COVID. So to have conversations means that I have to try to navigate through not only trying to understand people's cues, I have to navigate language. And that takes time, takes work. I'm still a work in progress. I'm slowly getting someplace every single day. Yet that's part of who I am. That's part of being on a neurodivergent human, that I tend to either I will switch a saying, or I'll have to substitute words, or I'll just come up with my own word. So language just seems to be one of those things that can pose something that's a little bit tricky, like a sort of a set of windshield wipers that I have to every now and then go, all right, let's clear up a little bit.
Thank you for that. All right.
Hey, Stephanie, there's
Yes.
it's been a lot of good stuff in the chat. But,
Okay.
there was one here that just kind of struck me. Figured that it might be a good thing to throw out on the table to the panel. It's from
Okay.
Camille. No, she doesn't mind me reading her chat. But she says, I've learned that being a minority, I have to have someone advocate for me in order to move up within the department or to provide the tools to grow and evolve. I thought that was interesting. Anyone have a similar experience or want to comment on that?
Panel?
I would say that's my experience as well. Every department that I worked in so far, which I'll say three departments. IP records, I had a boss who was AKA Muslim convert, and that kind of helped me. He always like lifted me out of a group of 20 people. And not to say that my own efforts in the RIM field were any less, but it was always somebody else was also looking out for me, as well as my next department, which was regular records. And even there, I had a manager who was always looking out for me, always making sure that my diversity was recognized and kind of lifted. And even now, I gotta say, like, with all of these moves, I've always put in my own efforts as well, and I think they have shown. But it has always been a blessing for me to have managers that recognize and uplift. Even right now, my manager is super duper supportive of me, always, praying, wearing my hijab, the foods that I can eat or not eat if we're ever going out. And I have to say it's been, again, very much appreciated and definitely a blessing for me.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel?
I'm going to tend toward away from the word advocate, because that's part of being often in the community I'm part of, there are advocates to try to speak up and promote and enable. Often I have found that for me, because I wasn't as open about who I am, I look at it more as that I had mentors along my road who inserted and decided to develop my skills before I could see them, before I had the confidence. So I really look at not only having advocate, it's equally important to have bridge building, partnership, mentors. It's this having someone in your back corner to sort of bolster the confidence, because often there's so much doubt, so much negativity that has been placed on to this community, that to gain confidence is a daily task. It's daily. You look at yourself and say, I can do this. It's like that train that said, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And so often within this community, there's so much less than placed onto it that just now there's so much more need to say, build these bridges, build these mentors, build the capability to amplify, be seen, be heard, be understood, and not only amplify, but understand, and understand who they are, understand how their confidence appears, and understand that they're equally as capable. They're just going to do something. Some things that are going to be a little bit unique to what might be accepted in the general realm. So sometimes it's just taking time to digest that there are other avenues or other ways of doing an activity. It's as though you're going to do a math problem. There might be 3 ways to do it. Well, allow those 3 ways and open up that door and allow that perspective to be present at the table. That means that you might have an advocate, you might have a mentorship, you might have someone who's there saying, let this person be heard.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Yusra. Thank you, everyone that answered that question. Camille, do you feel that we answered that question for you or highlighted it?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I mean, that's just something I've noticed, and it's true. Mentorship and advocacy, they are 2 different things.
Mhm.
But the reason why I chose advocacy especially is because that's, for me, the one thing you need, that voice in the room to
Mhm.
say, hey, I noticed Camille. I noticed that she has these capabilities. I noticed that she's good at these things. How can we use that as a strength to lift up not just herself, but our department? How can we use her specialty in our department? And then, that helps the whole department evolve, and it helps it to grow. And it also it builds, upon one another. So for me, as I said, that was something that I experienced in the years before, where it's like, that you're good at doing something, but you're not necessarily seen. It's like, it's getting done, but there's no highlight or like, hey, Camille, this is really good at what you're doing. Maybe let's work on how we can get this to grow. It never really happened then, but as I said, I'm in a better space now, and that's how I'm even in ARMA. That's how I'm in the department, in our department. That was something that was mentioned, but it wasn't really pushed for us to join and to really get into like our chapters, because I'm in the New York chapter. So that was something that was never really pushed for us. But now, being that we get to understand even more what information governance is, what records is, because I fell in like everybody else. So when you have other like-minded people, and especially minorities as myself, like, you feel that there's so much more to this than just kind of what you've seen firsthand. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments and opening up to the rest of us. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And I will say a little thing before I jump on. I had a former boss that, sometimes saw me, but now in the past 4 or 5 years, I have a new boss that has really seen me. And it's helped me in my career that I've been at for a long time, but it's so nice to be heard, seen, and my ideas pushed forward. And being someplace for as long as I have, I feel like all of a sudden I have a new career on top of it, and doing other things within the firm also. And I will say, here on my ARMA New England, with my fellow board members, I see Donda out there and Mark and John and Susan, and I feel like, and Meg and everybody, you wise me up also. So I appreciate all of you. And Colin, you know how I feel about you. So I think we kind of answered the next question, but Colin, if you want to pop that up. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
I don't have another Camille question, so this one's from me.
Okay.
And I'd be curious to see if you guys agree. And Glenn, you've been in the top of the mountain of ARMA, so your perspective as well would be kind of interesting to me. So one is sort of an observation of mine, which could be completely wrong. So you guys could tell me if it is. But, as I do consulting, right? So you go out and you meet a lot of clients and talk to people doing RIM and IG work around the country. And I would say from my perspective of doing that, I see a lot of diversity, right? Which is awesome. When I get to ARMA, I don't see as much diversity as I do everywhere else within our industry. Again, companies, law firms, whatever. Think of our New England chapter itself. A lot of diversity, right? And I don't believe that's because we don't have diverse people doing the jobs in New England or elsewhere. So do you guys agree with that perspective? And if that's true, like as it relates to ARMA, that ARMA doesn't sort of reflect the diversity of the workforce, how do we change it? So, two-part question.
Glenn, where you've both been in the chapters and.
Yeah, as you raise that point, I'm reflecting in my mind of our board over the years, as well as presenters that we've had. And I do agree, I think there's a lack of diversity. There's an opportunity to improve that. I know that when we, especially during our annual conference that we have, we try to make it a point to make it more diverse, but it's proves to be more challenging in reality to accomplish that sometimes, but at least it's our intention and we give some thought to that through the planning process. Yeah, I definitely feel like there's opportunity and I don't know, I feel like there was a comment made earlier about just in terms of mentoring and advocacy and it's maybe there's a greater challenge in confidence levels or even the ability to support going into more leadership roles too. Maybe there's a lack of opportunity or confidence or things that prohibit that from happening. And so there's an opportunity there, I think, to expand, so that can happen more readily.
If I can piggyback on what Glenn just said, and I try to be brief because I know we're short on time, but there are so many layers to this onion that we can peel back on. It's a lot to unpack. So I'm gonna try to quickly touch on some topics. So as Glenn said, I think one of the challenges has to do with opportunities to get to that level to where the company would pay for people to attend a conference.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, when you look at diversity in our field, it's mainly at the staff level, which goes back to, I think Camille or someone was saying about, then you got to have the mentoring, right? Someone to help you get to that management level to where the firm or company will pay for you to attend the conference, right? So that's a big gap right there. And then also, it's not that many, management leadership positions available in our field. That's a challenge within itself, because it's not like we have one of the fields to where people are constantly getting promoted to other groups. Normally in a company, records management is the only department in that company, right? So that's another layer to have to pull back on. And then you start thinking about the other groups, data privacy, IT, that are going someplace else other than staying in records management. You know, but like I said, there's a lot of layers to peel from this onion to really get into. Oh, I wish we had more time. Probably be a discussion for another time. But there's a lot of factors that plays into that, because to Colin's point, when I'm out going around to other companies, I see diversity, but that diversity is not making it to InfoCon, right? Because it depends upon the rank and the level.
Thank you,
I'm
John.
gonna insert a question, and maybe this is for all to ponder. How do you make a conference friendly or welcoming to the neurodiverse community? For example, noise bothers me, loud sounds, lots of people, bright lights. How do you make that friendly to this community? I mean, I would go, yet I'm going to be wearing headphones half the time because it's just too loud, and I'm going to look for the darkest spot in the room. So how do you get this community to even be present when that's what a conference is? A bunch of crowds going to like parties and things, and that's not what I can do. I don't function at that level. So how do you get that group in? How do you open that door? How do you make the conference so it's friendly towards that community? I pose that question.
Thank you for that. And Nicole, I did see you wanted to chime in and say something, so take the last few minutes and respond.
I'm honored to take the last few minutes, and I was trying to piggyback off of what Glenn was saying about confidence. I don't know if he was going in this direction, but I will say, I know from my point of view, being a Black woman, I've been in records since 2001, and I've only had one Black manager, Black female manager in my entire experience. So I don't see a lot of me in my role. And so before I just became a manager when I joined Epic. I never dreamed of applying for a manager position. I was always comfortable, like I was in the file clerk, an assistant, a coordinator, and then I became a supervisor, and I was just like, I'm okay with that. 9 times out of 10, my boss was not 9 times out of 10, all of my bosses have been males, and I've had Black males and Caucasian male managers, but I've always been like, I'll be second. An actual manager that I used to work with had to encourage me to apply for the position, and they didn't tell me it was a manager position, or I probably would not have applied. I will be honest. I just did not feel, and even working with males in my department, I'm often, people are like, well, you're a female, can you do it? Like, I've honestly received that kind of feedback from coworkers, and I'm like, I'm lifting as many boxes as you're lifting. I'm pushing the cart. I'm doing everything that they're doing, but they're still looking at me as if I have some sort of handicap because I am a female. And so when it comes to that confidence, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like one of those, you don't realize that those opportunities are out there for you. You don't even think about it anymore. Like, you're just like, I've been doing this. This is where I'm comfortable. So until someone pushes you out of your comfort level, you kind of just stay where you're comfortable. Because for me as a manager, it's been uncomfortable being a Black woman. It has been. And when you don't, like I said, see a lot of Black women in your role, you feel like you stand out. You're just like, oh my goodness, I'm representing the community, and I've got to be on my P's and Q's, and it's just it's so uncomfortable, and we have to keep breaking that barrier. And it does sometimes take someone in those roles to reach out to us and say, hey, I see it in you. I know you got it. come join us, you can do it. Because otherwise we just keep saying, well, I'm comfortable, I've got the job, I don't think I'm in any risk of losing it, so let me just keep doing what I'm doing. So, yes.
Wonderful. That's a great answer. I'm so glad we got to do this today. This was really a wonderful time to just talk. I thank everybody on the panel for opening up and letting us in and hearing all your stories and experience. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I think we had a great conference and a great, talk this afternoon. A lot of things to take away, bring back to our companies, talk to, people in power or whatever, and to think a little differently. So, I've got all kinds of notes. So God, Scadam's gonna love this. I'm gonna be like, why do we have this? Can we do this? Can we go here? You know what I mean? But I think we've taken a lot of information and gives us a lot of thought. And, maybe we'll have a second part to this. But again, I welcome and thank you, everybody that attended. Thank you, my panel. You guys were awesome. Colin, great. And ARMA New England, thank you for supporting us. And it was a great afternoon. I just wanted to say also, when you go to our QR code and come on to our website, we do have a resource page, and I'm sorry we didn't get this out to everybody at the time, but it does give some things on Asperger's and unconscious bias, and so we do have some resources there also. And please check out the ARMA New England webpage. Thank you, everybody.
And we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel as well. So.
Oh,